Hi guys, hi there, good morning. This is task 2, as missed. So let's just see. Where's my pen? Here we are. So task 2 is let's read through it. 15 marks. It says you're provided with the following information regarding the budgetary and actual traders company. Again, I hope you've had a look at it, and it's all with experience. So don't worry if your answers don't match whatever you check the answers were, but you would have picked up, I'm sure some of your points would have been on there. I'm hoping at least some of your points, and I'll discuss which points I expect definitely to have been there, but then which points you would now pick up from doing this again. This is that business. Remember they acquired an interest in Merville? We discussed this when we were in class on Monday. Okay, great. So Merville have a long-term spanning 5-year plan. So that's their plan. They do a 5-year sort of budget plan. So in a way, they're getting us to think about the different types of budgets, if you like. Remember, this whole topic is about task 2 is particularly about budgeting. So the focus is very much on. So you're thinking everything about the different types of budgets. You could be thinking, and you could get another question that could be discussing incremental, zero-based. This idea of rolling budgets, 3-month budgets, that sort of thing. So that's what's really going on here. So this is a long-term 5-year plan, and none has been flexed for changes in activity. So that should ring a bell for you, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go along. So hopefully, again, I'm hoping to make this 10-minute video. So they've got the results. They're telling us sales volume exceeded budget by 20%. Our range continues to be well received by the market. Demand was strong. To meet our sales target, we discounted prices across our product range. And so we have turnover exceeding our budgeted target. This represents a 15% growth. And let's see where we are. Operating costs, however, rose due to the volume. Direct materials well controlled. We see a 5% increase during the year. Some difficulty in employing skilled labor. As variable production is recovered, this has caused adverse variances. Okay, yes. Selling and distribution well controlled. So remember again, I'm almost sure that in every single question, well, apart from task 5, there's always something about controls. Definitely task 1, definitely task 2. You're always aware of this idea of controls, and they're even helping you out. They're saying these are well controlled. So you're really trying to critically analyze whether or not it is truly well controlled. In general, remember, when we talk about control mechanisms, right, by any business, is really in the form of organizational structure, organizational culture, and of course, kind of the actual control put out there. That we talked about SOAP map, right? And then of course, when it comes to the actual functional situation, we're talking about reconciliations, we're talking about variance analysis. So within budget, we're really talking about variance analysis. So really, this whole area of control is always important to be very, very happy with. Okay, where are we? So let's look at the scenario here. So we can see we have a couple of issues here. First of all, they haven't flexed this thing. Look, they're literally comparing a fixed budget to an actual budget. This is a meaningless variance. Right, it's a meaningless variance because you know clearly from passing your exams that you need to flex this budget, and you will have to kind of actually prepare a flex budget, I'm sure, somewhere in your question. That's something you're already awake to. So anyway, it tells us they've asked you to comment on the effectiveness of their long-term planning of their budgetary and control procedure. So the long-term planning procedure. Now, if you remember, I think we saw in the earlier question, in the first case study on SL, they asked this kind of this question about. I'm just going back to see if I can find it. I'm just going to go back to page. If you're with me, if you can go back in your textbook to page 217 of your textbook. I don't have it here. Page 217 of your textbook, you will see that the first question said, examine the planning assumptions and calculations in the proposed budget and identify any weaknesses. So you can see there seems to be this idea of just evaluate and just have a look, first of all, at the planning procedures. Now, a couple of things. Well, it's a 5-year budget. And in of itself, that means that for a long-term budget, that's a good thing. But of course, what you want to do regularly is you want, in terms of critically analyzing this, you want to argue that what you want to do is, or what you want to ask is, how often can you change and adapt this budget? So can you actually do a yearly reflection and then kind of take the feedback from the previous year and adjust the standards? Because that's the issue here. There's no point having a 5-year budget and not being able to actually, if you like, amend anything. So really what you want is, you want a 5-year budget, but you want something that year on year you can keep adjusting, if you like, to make it more realistic. So adjusting the standards, because we can see, obviously, somehow they have this budget here of 12,600, and really they are exceeding this. Well, for different reasons, they've actually dropped the price. But the key point is that if the policy now is to reduce the price, well, you need to change the number of volume of units, because you can't keep holding this volume that you did for the last number of years. So really the issue here is, yes, of course, it makes sense that they have something in place, 5-year budget, but something closer, maybe a 1 year. I mean, of course, the problem, of course, because we're critically analyzing this, because we're critically analyzing this, the argument really is that this is time consuming, and do we have time to do this? So the key point here is that 5-year budget, good planning, good long-term planning, but yearly reviews and adjustment to standards critical, right? I think that's kind of the big issue here. Then you can kind of show your understanding of saying that, listen, you have to react. You can't have a static. Budgets are not meant to be religious. Budgets are meant to be active, live, up a notch. If you remember that budgets are a tool of communication. So, but if as you're going through a 5-year period, and if you're in a dynamic, or if you want to remain dynamic, sort of a budget that's almost moving in live timing, so it doesn't have to be as tedious as it does feel. Right. So that's that. Again, key points: 5-year budget, good, but yearly reviews and adjustments to standards to keep it relevant, if you like. So that, if you like, I mean, the closer you are, you can almost argue that the more relevant your budget is, that the fixed budget can be very much close to the actual. Okay, great. So let's look at question 2. The 2002 budgetary procedure. Now, the issue here fundamentally is we are comparing a fixed budget with an actual, and that's just not, we need to flex the budget, and you should go ahead and actually flex the budget. And if you like define the budget, really we define the meaning of flex. If you want to really argue that the first thing is we want to look at we want to compare, if you like with like. So compare, if you like, the actual output, so we can see what based on what you should have spent with what you actually spent on the actual number of outputs. Then we can have a credible kind of well or not. And then what you then want to say is this allows you to carry out some further analysis, material variance and efficiency variances. And that's where you're kind of going, because that's the point. And then actually calculate and actually carry out some variance analysis, actually do some calculation, if you like, and then see for yourselves, and then talk about those figures, if you like, literally reference those figures as well. I think because this topic is another kind of side issue that you can, I mean, there's only 5 marks, but another really important issue, because this is all about budgeting. The procedure seems, the reason why you seem to have this, you should be asking questions, why is this 12,600 really on what we've actually produced? So it feels that sales, the people in sales tend to be determining the budget. And they have kind of told us what's going on, and it's kind of that way. I might be wrong, but it feels that way. So the key point is that we want to argue, we just want to ask the question, because we're critically analyzing to what extent has everyone been involved in building this budget. And if you like, in terms of pricing also, this question of discounting quite heavily is an issue, if you like. I think that's an issue. So what is the process what is the pricing kind of policy and the budgeting when it comes to pricing, if you like? I think that's a big issue. If you look at the numbers again very quickly, you will see, let's just go back up here, that by the time we flex this budget, a lot of the so-called variances, because this is what you want us to really say, is that by the time you flex this budget, a lot of the variances they're talking about we can start looking at them now, right? So so turnover for 12,600, what you want to do is you want to kind of divide 1575 divided by 12,600. Turnover would be for 1 unit, and then multiply that by 15,120. You won't actually do this. If you like, do the same thing for material, divide this by this, because these are variable. Divide this by this, and then multiply that by 15,200. Take your labor, exactly the same thing, divide that by that, and multiply that by that. Selling and distribution you can leave alone. Well, yeah, I think you can leave that alone if we want to argue those are relatively fixed costs. So I think they give us some information there. Sorry, no, it's all variable. So these are variable. Sorry, do the same thing here, variable. So do that, and actually carry out the calculations. And then readjust or re-speak or now discuss how the variance analysis, calculate the new variance analysis if you like. To see what the actual variance analysis, what the actual variances are. Okay, finally, let's look at question 3. I've exceeded 10 minutes. This will be no longer than 15 minutes. But you want to please carry out that alone. Question 3. It's not coming up. 1 second. Where is it? Well, okay, I'll just quickly write that down. So the final question was, what are the internal controls? Internal controls. Now, when I say internal controls, remember these are just to try and achieve this budget. Purpose of controls, again, if you like, is what are we doing? What are we doing to kind of protect or ensure that we achieve our objective? So definitely variance analysis seems to be a kind of classic method. That's what's going on here. We are comparing what actually happens to what we thought would happen, and then trying to investigate, if you like, what's actually going on. So that's kind of the key here. I think in terms of other bigger issues, in terms of, before we look at the numbers, because we're going to look at the numbers in a second, because we're critically analyzing the internal controls being used to try, so we can go through each of the costs. But before we do that, I think that's the big one. Because it's long-term planning, I'm almost wondering if they could, this is just the overall general picture. Internal controls, so they have variance analysis, and I guess the idea of a 5-year plan. So I mean, you could argue that the 5-year plan is a type of control to make sure that the fact is they have a plan in place. This is just the big picture idea of control, right? And control can also be having someone who is equipped and knowledgeable to actually prepare the budget. These are all, if you like, controls. You need good controls to ensure that the standards that are being used are credible. So we don't think of controls purely from the numbers point of view. Think of controls in general. What's the big picture? Controls are also maybe having ERP systems. I don't seem to have any, but I'm just saying in general. The key point is that controls are really just having systems in place controls about systems. This exam is about systems. Really important, please. This is really about systems. Having systems in place. Controls are systems. Controls are systems in place to ensure that we achieve this. I can't see any motivational kind of targets. You might see that, but the key point is we have a 5-year plan. We seem to have variance analysis going on, and we are asking questions from time to time. Okay, great. And now we can look at the numbers, and we can see that by looking at the numbers, we can see that I don't think they have, well, in terms of controls, looking at the numbers, they have controlled. Let's just go back to the numbers here. Just get a rubber. So what we have here, very quickly, here we can see, this is really interesting, that whoever is in charge of materials has done very well, because there literally is almost barely any increase in materials, kind of, even though they've sold almost another 2,000 and whatever units, an extra 2,520 units. So very good controls over direct materials. Well, obviously not very good controls, or poor controls, poor planning over labor, because they had to bring in some. So this is what you're really highlighting. They had to bring in some additional labor at overtime, because the question is that you're in your 3rd year, and it says that you're growing year on year, and you're aware of this demand. So really the question is, you should have had some structure, either working with HR or someone, to start investigating and seeing how you were going to make sure you were able to deal with that extra demand, and therefore have the labor in place. So that's an issue there. This, of course, is based. Production overheads are related to direct labor. So those are some issues there. There's some relatively good controls over fixed costs. There's not a lot there. So you can break down what's going on by looking actually at the individual figures and talking about the controls in place. Yes, and so I think so discussing the general controls in place, I think there's some issues definitely in terms of with our pricing. Somehow, why we keep this seems to be a problem with this business. The selling innovative products keeps cutting its prices. Where is it? We discounted our prices, especially for innovative products. So I think there are some control issues in that department, if you like, and with who has the right to control these prices, because I think it's actually damaging income. So again, when you're thinking controls, think big picture. Think everything that is stopping us from achieving our business objectives. So I don't think they have very good controls in place to discuss or to really examine what's going on with their prices. Cool, great stuff. So that's TYU2. All I can say is, in terms of revision, look again, make sure you're happy with how you can flex budgets, and also how you can do your material and usage variances, right, for material and labor. Definitely, please have a review of that. Hopefully we'll do a question when we see on Monday, but this is important. Make sure you can do that, look at those variances, and you're comfortable with what's going on. Again, even if your first section A didn't look as the mark scheme, now you have a general idea of where they're really going. Remember what I talked about: zero budgeting, incremental, rolling budgets, 3 months. They could be talking about profit-driven, cost-driven. It really is. It could be incentives. So that it's a mixture of theory, and it's also with you also talking about the actual numbers. Okay, great stuff. I almost hit 20 minutes. Sorry about that.